Hey everyone, it's Evan Kirstel live here in San Jose at Zoomtopia. A fantastic time to talk with Dr. Tracy Brower, a sociologist, a PhD researcher, expert on all things work. How are you, Tracy?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your time, and we had some interaction many months ago in the middle of the pandemic, and I really wanted to catch up because hybrid work and the future of work and where we are, where we're going in the workplace is always a hot topic. And I really wanted your insights and analysis. So thanks for joining. Maybe before we jump in, maybe introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I am the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase, a global furniture manufacturer, and I'm an author. My newest book is called The Secrets to Happiness at Work, and I'm a contributor with Forbes and Fast Company. And I really research happiness and the sociology of work, how we affect our work, how it affects us. And of course, the timing is really good for all of that kind of research these days.
It really is, for good and bad. So give us a snapshot of where we are now. We're in this strange, nebulous gray area of hybrid work. Everyone has a different definition. It's still pretty chaotic. What's your perspective at the 30,000-foot level?
Yeah, wow. I think it's a great time to be in this field. Any of us who are thinking about work and the work experience. So when things are so upside down and inside out, actually a great time to reinvent and reimagine and kind of rethink work. I think we're at a really critical moment in terms of the way that we value work. Like, I think we're in this, and we can unpack this later, but I think we're in this narrative right now that work is a negative part of life and less work is always better. But work is actually a really important part of how we express ourselves and feel a sense of esteem. And the work experience is a really important part of that. How do we really improve the work experience? Hybrid is here to stay, but people are worried about job security at the same time. So with the power dynamics in the marketplace between companies and organizations and employees, it's a moment for us to be really intentional about the work experience and how we create great work experiences no matter where people are working.
Oh, such a great framing of the topic. One of the things that kind of interesting to you, perhaps, given that you write about happiness and happiness at work and bringing meaning to work, is Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom. His like top of mind thing is happiness and love, and he's like so explicit, which is so unusual for a tech CEO here in Silicon Valley to talk about those people. Back in the original, when he started talking about that as topics, were kind of like, what are you talking about? But you really dive into what that means to be happy at work and to be fulfilled and satisfied and joyful, which isn't easy. If you're a blue collar worker or even a white collar worker. I was pretty burned out from 25 years in the business or enterprise tech world. So, what do we mean by happiness, fulfillment? How do we align ourselves?
Yeah, I think those are really important questions. I mean, one of the things that I like to always start with is really thinking about happiness and its benefits, right? Like, I was talking to a journalist about my book and they said, "No, Tracy, aren't you a little tone deaf? Is this really the time to talk about happiness?" And it actually is a good time because we are thinking so consciously about our work. And the other pushback is always like, "Isn't happiness just a little fluffy? Could we get down to more important business topics?"
Oh, you sociologists. Yeah.
I know, you sociologists, right? But there's tons of research on the effects of happiness. For people, it's obviously really good in terms of our esteem and our well-being, physically, cognitively, emotionally. But at a business level, when people are happier, they tend to set bigger goals and be more likely to reach them. They tend to perform better. They tend to be more likely to stick with their current organization. So retention is affected. They tend to learn more over time and contribute more significantly. So there are really good business reasons to focus on happiness. And I think one of the things we really need to consider is that happiness absolutely ebbs and flows. Like we
Mm.
have this myth in our, North American or Western culture vernacular that if you're doing it right, it's bonbons and butterflies and you're always happy all the time. And in reality, happiness will ebb and flow. There will be parts of our work that we love. There will be things about our work that aren't our favorite. That's okay. We can still have an overall sense of joy and fulfillment, and we can create the conditions for that.
Wow, empowerment. What a great idea. But you're saying it doesn't have to be every Monday you wake up and you're just happy, you're raring to go. I like the idea of ebbing and flowing. Now, what about the current, R word, recession word? Not a happy time if you're either laid off or at a company with layoffs. How do you navigate through this new landscape we're in? Happiness isn't exactly top of mind if you're in a company or industry or economy that's struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like one of the things we know from research is that it's really healthy to kind of take stock and look around and be clear with ourselves, take a deep breath and, really validate the stress and challenges that we're all under, and then keep moving forward. There's also some wonderful research on when we take action related to something that we're concerned about, it's actually really good for our happiness because it tends to reinforce a sense of control when we feel so out of control. I just published an article on Monday about where the best hybrid opportunities are in terms of career fields, in terms of states, in terms of cities, in terms of how you think about the fit. And so the really interesting paradox in the market right now is that we're hearing all of these, news clips about layoffs, and unemployment still remains relatively low at 3.7. And we also know that it seems to be a trend more than a blip, that companies are paying attention to work life and the experience and well being. And so I think we can still remain optimistic about the opportunities that are out there, about the ways that we can expect companies to meet people's holistic needs for happiness and well-being. So I think there's still cause for optimism, and it's all still about networking, right? Statistically, we find our best opportunities through our secondary and tertiary networks. So I think that opportunity to stay connected and build relationships are really pragmatic ways that we can sort of stay on top of where we go next.
Yes, where we go next, indeed. Tell us about your journey on the academic side, on the industry side. How did you come to do what you do?
Yeah, so I've been with Steelcase about 5.5 years. I love this company. I think it's an amazing place. We
Tell
do
us more.
hybrid work as well.
Don't know about Steelcase. You're a little sort of behind the scenes as a
Yeah, so furniture company paying attention to work and healing and learning and how to help people reach their potential and work better in all of those kinds of opportunities. And before that, I was actually with a CPG company, M&M Mars, for a couple of years. Before that, I was with the furniture industry and in a first tier automotive manufacturer. So I've had sort of a journey through companies and organizations, and I've always been in a role working with companies on a consultative basis. So I feel like I've had this great opportunity to study organizational culture and really the experience of people in all different facets and contexts. And then I'm also on the academic side, so I write, but I went back to school. I got my master's early, and then I went back to school to get my PhD when our kids were young. They were kindergarten and third grade. And our son said to his kindergarten class, "Yeah, my mom's going back to school again because she didn't get it right the first time." so, so I love the
Dave,
academics.
I love
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Kids always have the best perspectives. So now they're of course 20 and 24, so they have even more perspective. But I love the academic side, the research, and really understanding from an evidence-based perspective what's going on, but then applying that in the real world. I think that's the cool place to be right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're a content creator. I saw you tweeted recently, stop consuming and create. Too many people are just absorbing content and streaming and TV and without actually putting stuff out into the world. Uh, you've obviously authored 2 books. You do many articles at Forbes and other places. Tell us about your content creation passion.
Yeah, I do have a passion. I always say that writing is my weekend hobby, right? It's the way that I think. So, but I feel like there's also just a really lovely sort of philosophical perspective on that as well, right? When we are really focused on ourselves, that tends to be negatively correlated with happiness. When we're really focused on finding happiness for its own sake, that tends to be less helpful in actually experiencing happiness. What is more correlated with happiness is contributing to others, thinking about how we help others, thinking about how we make contributions to the community. And of course, we need to, manage our boundaries and practice self-care and all that kind of good stuff. But it's really helpful when we're thinking about the community and how we make a contribution. And so that, I think, is also part of what I mean by less consumption and more creation. How are we creating value for others? How are we thinking about others, especially when things are so politicized? And how do we ensure that we create great relationships with others? Like, sometimes I think about social media as empty calories, right? Like, we just finished
Oh,
a
it's full of
tweet.
I would disagree. They're full of fat and sugar and
Yeah,
salt. Yeah.
exactly. It's like the Halloween candy corn, right? Like,
Oh.
really great, but not so great. So how do we stay connected and networked and socially networked on its own? And then how do we also build relationships in ways that are meaningful?
In your 2 books and your research, I'm here at Zoomtopia, which is Zoom's premier annual event. Largely a lot of techies and practitioners in IT and so forth. But do you have any advice from either of your books, your writing, top 2, 3 practices to put in place to make remote work and work from home and collaboration more seamless, more better, more happy, joyful?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing is purpose. Like, we absolutely know that happiness is correlated with purpose. And sometimes when you're working remote, you can feel like you're all alone in an echo
Mm.
chamber. And so when we stay connected to the reasons that we're working, and when we're like just kind of realistic about those, like, we don't have to solve world peace or world hunger. We can just wake up and do the thing that we do well and feel good about that and remind ourselves about how our work connects to the work of others. So one thing is purpose, I think. Another really big one is connections. Like even if we're introverted on the sort of scale of introversion and extroversion, we need those connections with others. So a lot of times, again, when we're working remotely, we might feel less connected with our coworkers. So
Mm.
when we can be super intentional about building relationships and even staying connected at a superficial level, is correlated with happiness. And then the third thing that's really interesting related to happiness is learning and stretch and growth. Like, we all need those moments where we can kind of do something without thinking so hard about it. But when we are really solving a new problem or figuring out something that requires lots of brain cells, that requires us to think in new ways, that's really correlated with happiness. So I think the way we can think about that is like, raise our hands for that next opportunity, take initiative, go for that next thing that you want to try, even if you're 70% ready for it instead of
Mm.
100% ready for it. And if you're working remote or hybrid, those opportunities for learning are great for your esteem and your happiness. They're also really good for building relationships because it just keeps you connected with others in the work experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. There is a big disconnect between the worker bees and the managers who are trying to navigate and really struggling. Many are opposed in their thinking. There's a strong push to get people back in the office, a strong push against that from many of workers who want this hybrid or remote lifestyle. How do you cope with this as a manager, a business leader, and lead in a way that it's a win-win for employee and employer?
Yeah, I feel like this is a $6 million question lately. I almost feel like it's like I've been thinking about the great sift in terms of leadership, right? Like, when leaders can coach and not just engage but inspire, when they can connect with others in meaningful ways and give feedback and mentoring and guidance, that's great leadership no matter where we're working. And that is even more important now, right? Like, when we're leading based on objectives and outcomes instead of whether somebody's sitting at their desk. And I think leaders can create the conditions for people to want to be in the office. Like, I feel like the popular press in some ways has done us a disservice, right? Like, because we've set up this false contradiction where we've said all work from home is the best, or all work from the office is the best, when really the best of hybrid is both worlds, right? Like, maybe we get more flexibility on a Monday or a Friday, and we still want to be in the office for certain reasons. So I think leaders can really think about how they're contributing to a culture where people want to be part of it, partly in person, partly from a distance, where leaders provide for accessibility and presence. They make themselves available, whether that's virtually or face to face, where they give people more choices and autonomy, where they give clear direction and the opportunity for people to provide input and participate. Those are some of the things that I think we need to figure out today.
Oh, great, great roadmap to more happiness. So you have two books. Do you have another underway, or do you have any topics that you're really keen to write about moving forward? Like what can we expect maybe looking into?
Yeah, we actually are talking about re-releasing The Secrets to Happiness at Work, which I think would be pretty cool, kind of the
Yes.
new and expanded with a new chapter on, a key topic. So we're figuring that out right now. The thing I'm really excited about and that I'm continuing to research deeply is community and connections. I
Wow.
just feel like relationships are so important today, and our levels of well-being, according to the research, have absolutely plummeted. And that's absolutely correlated with our distance from each other. Like we've reduced friction in our lives. We've increased convenience, right? We don't talk to the barista. We use the app to order. We get our shipment from the grocery store instead of talking to the checkout person. And those superficial connections in society are absolutely correlated with happiness. And
Wow.
so work takes on a new and expanded importance in terms of our opportunity to be in relationship with other people, either from a distance or face to face. And so I think this really important and intriguing area for research is community and connection and the role of work in all of that. 75% of people say they make their friends at work, and work ends up being a really great place that we build relationships because we get to know people over time. We see them in task and we run into them and talk about what they did over the weekend. We see them on good days and bad days. So work ends up being really central to our sense of relationship.
Oh, such a great point. And I do feel for young people who are missing a lot of these opportunities for connection and community through pure remote work. And yeah, as far as community, I'm just such a huge fan. I have all these social media followers, and audience building is great, but it really is my inner community of a few thousand people. And we're messaging and chatting and DMing and WhatsApping all day long, all sort of behind the scenes. And that's really even more interesting than what I tweet or post or live stream. So couldn't agree more around community. Well, thanks so much for joining on a quick live stream around Zoomtopia. What's next for you? Any travel? Any interesting events coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to be speaking with the Jamaican Institute of Architects later this afternoon, and
I
have
hope that's
several.
in Jamaica. Please tell me.
I know. Wouldn't that be lovely? It would be lovely. But yeah, we've got some conferences coming up and webinars coming up, just some really, really great. I'm right there with you. Like the engagement with other people and the conversations that we have through all these different channels is so engaging. And I don't know, I feel like it's nurturing as well, right? We have so much to learn from each other and from our perspectives. So that's a good thing.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to read your next piece. And everyone follow Dr. Tracy Brower with her Twitter handle. I hope are you going to get a check mark, blue check, confirmed? Whatever that is.
The controversial blue check, right?
Yeah, I'll be looking for that. And take care. Have a great
Awesome.
week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.